Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. Tonight, we'll be looking at the topic, HR and data privacy. And our facilitator is Ajoke Omotayo. She is a regular and veteran facilitator and speaker on this prestigious platform, and she's also a core member of this great community. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun. Ajoke Omotayo is an HR professional with over a decade experience driving profitability, performance, and people-focused strategies across diverse industries, including hospitality, logistics, real estate, manufacturing, insurance, financial services, power, energy, and consulting. Proud to now, ladies and gentlemen, before she pivoted to HR over 10 years ago, she had also spent over a decade on roles focusing on commercial, maritime, logistics, and international trade. She's globally certified with Human Resource Certification Institute, HRCI, where she is recognized as a senior professional human resource international, SPHRI. She has a master's in international human resources from the prestigious Rome Business School, Nigeria, and recently completed the Women in Leadership program with the Lagos Business School. Beyond her professional exposure in HR, she is also passionate generally about career development and women empowerment. She is actively facilitating learning sessions for women on how they can use insurance as a tool for generational wealth, among other things. Ladies and gentlemen, she's also on LinkedIn, and you can check her out on Ajoke Oyedele. On the topic of this interview.
I think network has thrown Dr. out. He'll join us now.
Please go ahead, man.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adeosun. I appreciate this privilege. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate your time and attention at this time of the day. My topic today is HR and data privacy. This topic has been in the public space for quite some time, but I'm going to try to go into it in a more focused fashion so that we can get to see how our actions as HR people are going to directly impact the way data is handled in our individual organizations. So I'm going to go to my outline today. Our outline is, I hope you can see my slides. Please let me know if you can see them, and if you cannot, let me know.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I have an outline which we're going to go through because the slides are quite a lot, but not all of them have text on it. I'll try to be as quickly as possible. So my introduction is what I'm going into now, so that we can just keep it moving now. So my introduction says this session is a comprehensive guide. Well, if you don't have your biro and paper, please get it. You'll need to jot a few things down. This session is a comprehensive guide to understanding the growing importance of data privacy regulations in Nigeria and globally. That's fair enough. In today's interconnected world, data drives decisions and actions. I think all of us know the essence of data. Most of us are HR professionals. It's something that we handle every day. But the fact is that governments and regulators, they have started to prioritize the safeguarding of personal information just to prevent misuse by people of unsavory character. So data privacy is a human right as enshrined in our constitution in Nigeria and other places. And today's program, there will also be a specific focus on the responsibility of HR staff in data privacy and protection vis-a-vis the Nigeria Data Protection Act of 2023. The key learning outcomes, I'm assuming that after this session, all of us will take personal precautions in handling data, and we'll also take precautions the way we support our teams to achieve security of data, IT assets, and usage of devices. That's a learning outcome I anticipate. I believe that it will happen, and more than that. So we'll move forward. My first question is, what is data? I think we all know what data is, but in reading, in getting ready for this particular session, I noticed that there are diverse meanings to data, but let's keep it simple. Data is information collected, stored, or processed for decision-making. That means if I'm taking your balance in the bank, it's a data. If I'm asking for your number, it's a data. If I'm asking you to fill a form for me, it's data. It can be in various forms, such as text, numbers, images, or personal details. I said the slides are many, but most of them, we're not going to do all of them because they are things that we all know. Data, it can be collected, it can be stored or processed for decision making, and it can be collected and you do nothing with it, just keep it for keeping sake. So in terms of data, I'm sure that if I ask those of us who are in HR here, what we're using data for, we'll be able to point to one or two things that we have used them for in organizations in recent times. So today we're going to look at how does our actions as HR, how does it impact the usage of data? What is data privacy? I have a small definition here, and it's as simple as possible. It says it's a protection of personal and sensitive information from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. What is data privacy? We understand what data is. What is the privacy element of it? What does that mean? It's a protection of personal and sensitive information from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. Unauthorized, I think we all know the meaning of that, but unauthorized could happen in many ways. Sometimes it's not because the person wants to be mischievous. It could actually be because the information fell into their hands, the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so I'm going to quickly go through this and we'll get some other examples that I've lined up. Enforcement in Nigeria, Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023 is a principal data protection law signed June 12, it should be June 12, 2023. And we have a regulatory body. The body is called Nigeria Data Protection Commission, NDPC. We're going to see these words as we go along. NDPC enforces NDPA provisions. So let me say that again. The Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023 is a principal data protection law in Nigeria. Effective June 2023, the president has signed it. The regulatory body that pushes and drives that particular act is the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. We've seen them in news recently, but we're going to look at what they do more narrowly. So NDPC, led by a commissioner, Dr. Latiji, enforce NDPA provisions and oversee all data protection matters. So at this juncture, we're going to stop, and very briefly, we're going to look at this particular topic because it's important to us as HR professionals. I have people on call that I can see, and most of those that are joined after me, I'm really not seeing the names, but I'm expecting that we'll be able to make this interactive and participate. Romance and data privacy. There's a second slide that speaks to this, but this is the first one. In terms of data privacy, which means protection of my data, keeping it private, I have the right to safeguard my information. Data privacy, protection of personal and sensitive information from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. I'm giving that definition again because we need to treat these questions. One more time, data privacy means there is protection of my personal information. There's protection of my sensitive information from unauthorized use, access, or disclosure. So in terms of relationships, I'll need one person, two persons to have a minute of thoughts and say to us, can this apply within a marriage? Okay, in marriage, we're supposed to be one, we've been naked, we've done everything together. Are there some things in my phone, in my life, in my past, in my present, in my organization that I have the right to say, bros, no? Are there some things in my current situation? Are there some things in my custody? Are there some things on my devices that I have the right to say to my wife that, my wife, please, no, thank you? The second question says, can there be data privacy within intimate relationships? Is it possible? if you're on the call and you have anything to say about this, I'll appreciate that you drop it in the chat box. I'll go and check. So we're looking at this because sometimes we get arguments around the issue of password on my phone, password on my this, password on my that, the passwords to my account, the balances of my accounts. A lot of things happen that we get to hear about on social media and even in private situations. So as a HR professional, if your employees are married, your data privacy policy, does it apply to them? Does it affect the spouse or who? What do you think? Can there be data privacy within intimate relationships? So I've dropped that there. Whatever your thoughts are around this, please drop it in the chat box as we move on. Thank you. I'll come back to it in a few minutes' time. This is the global data protection landscape. I'm showing this so that we will know that data protection is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's something that is a growing concern globally, and even beyond the shores of Nigeria, attention is being paid to it. So this slide says global data protection landscape. Nigeria, I'll go over what Nigeria has again. Nigeria Data Protection Commission is backed by the NDPA 2023. But before NDPA, there was a Nigerian Data Protection Regulation. That's NDPA. Those who are lawyers on the call will actually understand this much more than myself or yourself, or those of us who are not lawyers. So there was, before NDPA, there was the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation of 2019. Yes, and it had a framework. It had a framework that was issued by NITDA. They are still alive up till now, National Information Technology Development Agency. Now, in signing the NDPA, has this in any way overridden or does it in any way override the NDPR? No, they're actually working together. But in going through the act, there's a portion of it that you get to realize that where there's a conflict of anything, NDP supersedes. But till date, everything that both of them are speaking about, they're very much in line with what needs to be done. So in Europe, we have the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. They are a body that also oversees the data protection, and they have one of the most robust policies. As a matter of fact, I will listen to somebody in Lagos State government speak about data protection. And the gentleman said that in terms of robustness and scope, that the policy of Nigeria that was signed in 2023 mirrors very close to that of Europe. It's called the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. There's also one in US, Kenya has its own, other countries have, but we're not going to go into that today. It's just for us to know that we're not alone in Nigeria having this. So why does data protection matter? Why does it matter? These are things that even by looking at your life, my life, I know why my data protection matters to me, because there are certain things about me that I think are sacrosanct, I think are important, which is why even in marriage, there are struggles around data sometimes, there are struggles around privacy issues sometimes. Even in friendships, you think that this person has been my bestie for years, I should know everything, they should know everything, but there are certain things that we're keeping because the data is sacrosanct. So why does it matter at a time like this? Data is the new oil globally. I'm saying it's a new oil globally because if you look at certain industries like fintech, what they are living on, what they are breathing on is data. If you look at the insurance companies, if you come into insurance today as a salesperson, one of the major things you're looking for is leads, you're looking for contacts, you're looking for people who you can begin to market, you understand? Even though I also do insurance talks, in my spare time, I still get people from other insurance companies talking to me, trying to market one thing or the other. So data is what drives business now. Data is a new oil. Telecoms, real estate, name it. Even in your organization, whatever you're selling, you need the data of people. And then we said our business database is like a vault. I'm looking at why data protection matters. It's because our business database is like a vault. If you want to kill a startup, steal their database. If you want to finish a marketing person, steal the database. If there's any organization that is leveraging on people, leveraging on data to grow, to sell, to campaign, one of the most critical things that they hold dearly, and I've seen this happen in different places where I worked, it is the database. It's so critical, which is why before you let people into your database, sometimes you just want to be sure that they're not going to copy everything and move on. And then, of course, we talk about data protection matters in Nigeria because it's a constitutional right. Section 3(7) of Nigeria's Constitution guarantees citizens' right to privacy. So this right to privacy is one of the foundations of which the Data Privacy and Protection Act is built upon. I hope you're following me, and if there's any reason for any comments or anything, just drop them. Okay, so we're moving forward now. I've spoken about why data is important. I've said that it's a new oil globally. Our business database is like our vault. It's more important than the cash that we keep in the office now, because every other person has their money in the bank. The data requires my protection because it is the lifeblood of my organization. And then it's a constitutional right. Under the Constitution, I have the right to privacy. So if you're doing anything that tampers with my privacy, I have the right to report to you. So we're going to look at the Nigeria Data Protection Act of 2023. I've mentioned it once or twice, and now we're going to look at what it says and how it concerns us. So this slide is looking at the key objectives of NDPA. This is where it becomes very critical for us to understand as HR people, because there are certain things that we're looking at now that are going to, in no small way, begin to impact us. Number one, the NDPA says that you must safeguard it's to safeguard the fundamental rights and freedoms and interests of data subjects as guaranteed under the Nigerian Constitution. So we're looking at what is Nigeria Data Protection Act. We've said it was signed into law in 2023. So now we're looking at what is it about? What exactly is it aiming to do? It promotes data processing best practices that safeguard the security of personal data and privacy of data subjects. For every word that I put in red, there'll be something that I'll say to it. So safeguard my fundamental rights. Do I have the right to privacy? If I give you my data for the purpose of opening an account, do I have the right to expect that that is all that you're using it for? Do I have the right to say beyond the form I filled at your reception, because I came for an interview, I don't expect you to revert to me or revert to my data ever again? Do I have that right? Then we're looking at promoting best practice. What's the best practice? What's the best way to hold data? What is the best way to keep data in the manner that the owners of the data do not regret the exposure to you? So one of the key objectives of the NDPA is to make sure that we safeguard the security of personal data and the privacy of data subjects. Another one is ensuring controller processor obligations. Under the NDPA, there's a data controller, there's a data processor. And one of the key components of the act is that they want to make sure that both of those parties, the controller and the processor, they fulfill their obligations to data subjects. We've mentioned data subject, we've mentioned data controller, we've mentioned data processor. These three parties are involved in everything that has to do with data processing and privacy, and we're going to look at how their roles are interwoven. Another key objective of NDPA, we're moving as quickly as possible, is to regulate your data processing. Okay, regulate it to make sure that my data is processed appropriately and not diverted for unauthorized use. Unauthorized use, I'll give you a quick example. If I go into a microfinance bank to open an account, I fill out all my details, I deposit money, I go there once, I go there twice. I now find out that they have a subsidiary who, after like a month after my visit to the bank, started sending me messages. The subsidiary is not a microfinance bank. Rather, the subsidiary is into real estate. And now they are sending me messages, trying to market certain plots of land to me, which I think, ideally, they shouldn't even have an idea whether I can afford it or not. If at the end of my investigation, I trace it back and I realize that, okay, it is your colleagues in the microfinance bank that shared my data with you, it means that they've diverted my data for an unauthorized use. And those are one of the things that the NDPA is seeking to make sure that it does not happen. It also seeks to protect the data subject right. Do I have rights? Do I have rights as a citizen? Do I have rights as a data subject? And if you breach my right, what do I do? As a corporate citizen, if you go ahead and breach my right of privacy, is there anything I can do? The NDPA provides steps for what can happen. And finally, which is not limited to what its scope is, but we're just picking the salient points so that we'll move as quickly as possible. Strengthen the digital economy. The truth is that our economy is not different from what is happening all over the world. Everybody is leveraging on data, leveraging on IT, leveraging on AI to do the work, to expand our processes and procedures. So it is actually a digital economy now. That's why you hear about crypto, you hear about blockchain. Most of these things are no longer physical. They are processed, they are protected, and they are driven by IT. They're driven by data, and they're driven by tech. So it says, by strengthening our digital economy, it guarantees Nigeria's participation in regional and global economies through beneficial and trusted use of personal data. This is a lot of English, but the summary is that there's a global body that oversees data, right, data protection, and Nigeria has been able to join them too by virtue of the fact that we now have a strengthened regulation, which is the NDPA. So I'm looking at one of the bodies that one of the things I mentioned data processor, controller, I mentioned data subject. Who is a data controller versus data processor? If you're in outsourcing, if you're a third-party vendor, if you use a third-party vendor, or if you use them, at this point you need to know your rights, you need to know your responsibilities, you need to know what category you fall under, because if anything happens and NDPA has to be invoked because of you, NDPC is first of all going to sit down and define who you are. Who is a data controller? It's an individual organization that determines the purpose and owner of the data processing. So, for example, if I walk into the bank and I fill a form, if I walk into a finance company, if I walk into Nigeria Stock Exchange, if I walk into an asset management organization, okay, and I give them my data, are they controlling it or are they processing it? It could be either way. The data controller is the person or the organization that determines the purpose and manner of data processing. It means that whoever I give my data to that has the sole opportunity, the sole power to determine that, okay, it's going to be used for X, Y, Z, that's a data controller. So I've given examples: a bank collecting customer information, insurance companies processing policies, telecom provider storing customer data. No doubt they are data controllers, because the moment I fill that form, either to replace my SIM in MTN, either to buy a new SIM at Glo, the moment I give them my data, they're in control of it. Whatever they do with it after, sometimes it's not even known to me. I can only assume that this is what they use it for. Then a data processor is somebody who processes data on behalf of a controller based on their instructions. The data processor, it is assumed, does not process without instructions. The data processor is assumed does not have access to the data without it being passed to them from a data controller. The data processor, it is assumed that whatever they do with your data is a function of the instruction they got from the controller. So I've given examples like cloud storage providers. I move my data to them, just the way that a lot of us have outsourced our data to Meta. It's with them. We assume that it is stored. One of my former organization, we had an IT guy who would go around and do the backup. After doing the backup, he will still now, download it and put on a drive and still take it to an offsite. And then we'll say to him that, is it that you don't even trust this cloud? And he'll be like, that even though I trust the cloud, let me still have a physical hard copy somewhere. So that person is processing the data. Marketing agencies that handle campaigns. So if my marketing agency is called JKZ, and what I'm going to do now is to drive the campaign for a new organization that is going into HR consulting, what they will do is they will give me the data of their clients, and they're going to be talking to me about, okay, what campaigns are we doing? What roadshows are we doing? What messages are we sending? So they are going to expect that by giving me the data, what I'll do is process the data and use it for campaigns. I'm working based on what they have given me, and I'm supposed to follow their instructions. Then payroll outsourcing companies, those are one of the biggest issues for us in HR. If you give out your payroll to people to say, okay, please process it for me, you need to be sure of what they are doing. If you give out your payroll to your staff who is processing in-house, you need to be sure of what it's doing. But as we go on, we'll begin to see how it applies to all of us. I'm seeing a question here. Whatever it is, just keep it coming, and then they'll get to a point where we will now need to, of course, look at the case studies together. We have about 53 of us online. Okay, so we're moving forward. So if you're a third party for an organization, you have responsibilities as a data processor. If you're the main collector of the data, you're a data controller, you have your responsibilities too. I hope that is clear. And then at the end of the day, there is one person who is peculiar to all parties. That is the data subject. Who is the data subject? That is the person who is in between. That is the person whose data you are holding. So we're going to look at this together. Please, I need interaction here at this point. Shout out to my family mentees online. I see you, I love you. Who breached? So I'm going to quickly go over this and then we'll quickly look at it. We don't have the whole day. XLR Limited outsourced their payroll to Greco Limited. Greco is my outsourcing company. I've outsourced my payroll to them. The head of HR of XLR emailed Greco Limited about management's approval of a new increment of fuel allowance. So XLR is a company. I've sent a mail to Greco and I'm saying that, find attached the recent approval that I got from the MD authorizing the increment of fuel allowance for social category of staff, and I sent it to them. The only person I copied in the mail was the MD. I'm sure you can see my slides. So that was on March 13. On March 19, the delegates from the union approached HR demanding for similar transport allowance adjustment for junior staff. So they're not just saying that, HR, this thing is biting us, where it's biting you. No, what they're saying is that you people have done 100% for yourself. Please, I know that you know that we're in the same economy. It's affecting us the same way. We're expecting that 100%, otherwise there'll be trouble. And they threaten bad press on social media if it's not addressed. Of course, it's already looking like it's going to become an issue. Because even if HR is maintaining her cool, you know that there are some senior staff that will think that, Mr. Man, how can you talk like this? By the end of the day, the question is, how did the union get access to confidential payroll information? Who is responsible for the breach? If the breach happens, who do we hold accountable? How could it have happened? I would expect those who are able to drop their chance to please do that. We'll look at this for 2 minutes. How did the union get access to confidential payroll? Payroll is confidential. The owner of the payroll mailed it to their outsourcing organization. XLR Limited is owner of the payroll, and it was mailed with instructions to GREECO. What I said was that in effect, 100% increment of fuel allowance for the managers on cadre 1, 2, 3. That was it. The only person I copied in the mail was my MD. So if somebody in my organization now comes into the middle of the compound and says, you people, you think you are wise. Do you think that you're the only ones that are being affected? That we're also being affected. I'm not asking if it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is that at this point, can I assume that it was HR that leaked it? If HR was going to leak it, what would have been the point of email? She would have picked up the phone and called. So I'm saying that in this case, I don't think the head of HR was the leak. I'm not even sure if it was the MD, but we don't know. But who could it have been? Okay, so if you have thoughts around this, please drop it in the chat box. I'll quickly check and then we'll move on from here. Omonua, I appreciate you. Thank you. You said the breach is between HR personnel, MD, and the outsourcing company. Yeah, I've identified that MD gave approval. I've identified that HR sent a mail to the outsourcing person. And I've identified that the junior staff have come back to act. So between that tripartite agreement, between that 3 cycle, who could have leaked it? Do you think it was the MD? You said between HR personnel, MD, and the outsourcing company. Omonua, I appreciate this. So is somebody saying that it would have been the MD, either IT or the outsourcing company? And you says either IT or the outsourcing company, MD wouldn't have done that. Okay, I want to agree with that. Ellen says, I think the breach is internal. Laura, thank you. Laura said, I think the breach is internal. Okay, it means that even before listening to the HR manager, the guy has been sacrificed already. Because when Abitos has said that he doesn't think it was the MD, I want to agree with him. If somebody says the breach is internal means that the person that sent the bill, which is the HR, was careless. This was a true life story. I'll tell you what happened. And thank you for your comments. Thank you for dropping responses. I appreciate this. I'm not taking it for granted. So I'll tell you what happened. This was a true life story. What happened was that in the midst of discussing about everything, mails were sent and it was closed. March 19 was some days. This March, this is a hypothetical date. I can't write the correct dates. So the expectation was that because our payroll needs to close on maybe 20th or 22, and this being hypothetical, so that nobody thinks it's about them. At the end of the day, something happened. It's good for you to have a very good relationship with your people. So someone like me, one of the first things I do when I resume anywhere is to identify the leaders of the union, and whatever it takes, we must roll together. Roll means that in terms of discussion, in terms of acknowledgement, in terms of giving respect, in terms of giving ears, access, attention, I make it a priority because any industrial relations issue is an issue for the organization. And for me, it's about the business first. Okay. So what happened was at the end of the day, we had a discussion one-on-one and we were like, okay, how did you get to know this? Nobody was ready to talk because of course, you know that it was not a clear transfer of information. But I'll tell you what happened. One of the junior staffs, who is very close to HR, came to the office and HR was like, you people that you like causing unnecessary trouble. That who told you that they are increasing salaries? Who told you? They're not increasing anything, that the company is actually struggling. This is HR whining the driver. And driver was like, boss, leave that thing. Boss, leave that thing. It's not possible. That the person that gave us this information, he can never miss it. That because he knows what is going on. He knows what is going on. And the guy was very curious that he knows what is going on in this company. When he said, no, this company can. You've already done it. You've covered it now. And then I'll tell you how the story went down in 1 minute. It turns out that in the course of a discussion, the outsourcing company had an MD, of course, who was very close to this other company. So let me tell you that I'm the outsourcing MD. What I did was that when I was driving in the car, I was on my laptop. And then I called my office and I'm saying to one of my staff that XYZ, did you get the mail that I forwarded to you? And maybe that one is like, which of the mails, man? And I'm like, from XLR Limited. Number one, I've dropped the name. I'm talking to my staff. Because their MD has given approval and we're increased. So it means that people need to change the payroll that we're running. because we have a deadline. You know, we must submit their payroll by 20th. I think the other person now asked a question. So I'm the MD on the phone. I'm not like, did you hear what I said? No, it's not for everybody. Check the mail. Check the mail. The mail already specifies which cadre of managers are getting this increment of fuel allowance. What I need you to do is to be on the neck of the payroll guy. Let him run this thing. Let me see the figures, because at the end of the day, the most important thing, I also need to see what our invoice will look like. Because of course, the volume of the payroll, the value of the payroll affects our invoice. That's what happened. That is what happened. The breach didn't come from inside. It came from outside, and it came from the most unlikeliest source. Unfortunately, the driver who was driving the MD with his ears like this, he doesn't work in XLR, so he really doesn't care. But he has a brother who works in the factory. That is how the information went wrong. That is just for us to realize that. So when we talk about breach, it could come from any source. And I gave this story because the NDPA talks about third-party data processing requirements, okay? Which is why we're going to look at this. So under the NDPA, there's a third-party data processing requirement that says you must have a mandatory contract. Your data controller must have written agreements with any third-party processor handling personal data on their behalf. In this situation, what happened was that I already have a problem on the hands of my enemy because my staff upset. The MD is furious. Everybody's just upset because the truth is that the information has come out. No matter how much you try, it's difficult to put it back into a box. So it's either we're negotiating from a point of we'll do it next month, we can't do it, or we're reminding them that come. By the end of the day, we might use moral situation to say, let's have a discussion. We increased your salaries in December and we've not done anything for the senior staff. But the truth is that the breach wasn't supposed to have happened. And because it came from outside, it takes me back to third-party data processing that says there must be a contract. So if you look at the picture, this is a contract. Make sure that if you're outsourcing your information to anybody for any reason whatsoever, there must be a contract. And that contract is going to be part of your compliance documents later on. So this is the scope of NDPA that we're not going to dwell on. It just says it covers, it's centered on data controllers and processors engaged in the processing of personal data within Nigeria. It applies to entities domiciled resident operating within Nigeria. It covers data controllers outside Nigeria and those who process personal data of Nigerian data subject. Look at that one very clearly. You might be a data controller or data processor outside Nigeria, but if you process the personal data of Nigeria data subjects, you have a responsibility to us as Nigerians under the Act. So I'm going to look at definitions in NDPA. The definitions are critical because we're going to be looking at them as they apply to many situations. We're going to look at number one. Number one says data breach. What's a data breach? It's when there's a security breach resulting in unauthorized access, destruction or alteration of personal data. Destruction or alteration of personal data. I worked in a place many years ago where there was a senior colleague who had submitted a form. I think when he resumed initially, his personal data form, you know, when people resume, we'll do KYC, fill out your biodata, okay, everything. So later on in his employment, he now realized, I don't know what happened, that the date of birth that he gave to the organization was different. He got to know because, of course, they did his birthday. And then the age that he was assumed to be was different. So I'm aware that he spoke to somebody who was a much more junior officer and said, I need you to help me with my file. Can you go into that file and change something for me? I didn't know because I was not directly involved. But the young man was brought to the organization by the MD. So he was too afraid to go to the MD. He spoke to the MD's wife. That Mr. So and so has requested that I do this. I'm not sure what it would do if I don't do it, but I'm not sure I can do it. That was a data breach. That senior officer was asking him to do it. It was data breach, even though it's his own data. I'm the owner of the file. HR is the owner of the document. You don't have the right to do that. Number two is we're going to look at personal data. What's personal data? Information that can identify an individual directly or indirectly. So if you mention JK to somebody in the course of a discussion, it doesn't mean anything, okay? But when you say JK, Ajoke Omotayo, okay, maybe there are 2 or 3 of them online. But when you now mention that she has a low cut, her hair is usually red, he's looking close. If you now say she lives in XYZ, she works in XYZ, that's already my personal data because it means that it's unique to me and already you can identify with it. So it's important that the personal data is information that can identify an individual directly or indirectly. There are some that you throw around that you like, it doesn't matter. There are some that they will bring that you like, how do you know it's you? It might not be you now, but there are things that will be said that will be unique to you. Then data subject is the person whose information is being collected, stored, or processed. I tell people that I myself, everything about me, I'm already data as you're looking at, because my head, there's data inside. My phone, there's data. Even on this, my hand, there's some things that are right out that you don't know that is inside me. So data subject is the person whose information is being collected, but you, even as a person, protect yourself. You're a data, you're a live data. Because what you carry in your head is more than what anybody can pay for. Number 3, what is sensitive personal data? Sorry, 1, 2, personal data, 3, sensitive personal data. That is the difference. There is personal data and the sensitive one. Personal data is the one that, once you mention, I know it is you. But sensitive ones are those that they will never get out if we don't have a discussion. You're not supposed to know. For example, my NIN number. For example, my BVN number. For example, my salary. Do I support APC or PDP? Am I A+? Am I SS? Those are sensitive personal data. And we need to make a distinction, because later in this program, later in this session, we're going to see how it makes a difference. Now, number 1, I underline data breach in red because I want to tell you that one data breach can ruin somebody's life. And we're going to quickly look at one instance when that happened. Let me just move this. Okay. So I hope you can see this. I got this from Statistica. Statistica is, you can check them out online. Statistica is, it's a body that is given to looking at statistics all over the world. That is their main job. They go into data and they begin to analyze it. And they said in the 3rd quarter of 2024, 42.61 million data records were leaked in data breaches, impacting millions of individuals worldwide. The figure was so staggering, I couldn't really process it. I was just like, man, this thing is an epidemic. It's an epidemic. So whatever we're seeing on social media in Nigeria is just a tip of the iceberg. But I'm going to bring it home to somebody that is an employee. She could have been your employee, she could have been mine. And I'm going to show you that just by one breach, it ruined her career. Of course, she has picked herself up, but it wasn't the same thing. So read with me this tweet that was put out on X on June 13, 2020. And this lady says, some personal and professional news. This was her speaking to her followers. It got 83.3 likes. Some of the likes would have come later. For someone like me, I got to read about it later. But anyway, she said some personal and professional news. After 21 years at NDTV, I am changing direction and moving on. Later this year, I start as an associate professor teaching journalism as part of Harvard University's Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Read that again. Later this year, I start as an associate professor teaching journalism as part of Harvard University's Faculty of Arts and Sciences. So this lady had spent 21 years at this organization. She had risen to the top. She was a top journalist, a top honor personality. She was like a legend in the industry. And then she comes out to say that she's going to Harvard. Who doesn't want to go to Harvard? As I am now. If you tell me to go to Harvard, I don't know what I'm doing that will not drop. That come and go to Harvard. We're sponsored, you know. So even at her level, it was a big deal for her. So this is what happened after. What the tweet I read was 2020. This is 2021, 15th of January 2021, and it says Indian journalist Indi Razdan. She was a journalist. She worked her way to the top from being at the lowest level in the newsroom. She explains how she was duped into leaving career for fake job offer at Harvard. It was a dupe. It was a scam. There was no job. They tracked her from day 1, day 2, gave her enough information. You can read the story later on. By the end of the day, she was so convinced that she did what? She dropped her pen and paper. And she didn't just, you know, some of us that don't have access to huge networks of people, we don't know what God has done yet. But someone like her, she had so many followers, and of course, people look up to her. So she had to go online and talk about it. And this is what she wrote during this interview. This is just an excerpt. She said, I did not, in fact, receive an offer by Harvard University to join their faculty as an associate. She came out to say, I did not, as in, it didn't actually happen. It didn't happen. The perpetrators of this act used clever forgeries and misrepresentations to obtain access to my personal data, okay, and communications. The biggest part of it for me, as somebody who is safeguarding employers' data, is the last 3 sentences, or the last 4. She says, access. She thinks that they got access to my personal data and communications. I may have also gained access to my devices and my email and my social media accounts. So because I sit in positions where I have access to most of these things for people, I also work very closely with the IT team who have access to it too. it makes me very, very paranoid about a lot of things. She says that they had access to personal data, and they have gained access to our devices. What's a device? The most popular, the most common device that has become the normal thing that we cannot drop now is our phone. So we'll look at how that can impact us. So very quickly, we're going to look at how this is affecting Nigeria too. The case of this lady in India is just one of them. I just wanted to make us realize that it's not peculiar to Nigeria, it's happening everywhere. So this is a publication of Leadership Nigeria, one of the respected publications in Nigeria. It says alarming breaches because they found out that they could find Nigeria's data for sale. As a matter of fact, I think there was a story where they said that they were able to buy the NIN of one of our ministers online. So it means that identity for sale, how hackers breach security, steal data of vulnerable Nigerians. This is just to show you that it's happening and it can happen. But the essence of this course is not for us to argue about who or what. It was to look at what can we do differently. This is another one, Nigerian data privacy crisis, citizens' personal information sold for 100 naira. But the truth is, at the end of the day, if you can sell my data, if you can sell and buy my data for 100 naira, what will you use it for now? What do I have in my account? What do I have on my laptop? What do I have in my custody? Is this something that is valuable? So it's a function of who is involved. But the truth is that sometimes the information that people get are not used immediately. They are kept for the future, and you never know when they will strike. So this is just another example. I'm just trying to buttress the fact that data issues are peculiar all over the world now. Nigerian minister assures action on alleged sale of NIN slips. Now, this is another one. This is for Marriott. All of us know Marriott. Marriott is a place that I dream to go and spend time. Marriott International, it says hacking exposes data of up to 500 million guests. Up to 500 million guests. So very quickly, it says hackers breach Marriott Starwood reservation system, stealing data from 500 million guests. One of the things they stole was credit cards, addresses, passport numbers. You know how you go to the hotel? I've worked in an organization where we had an hotel before, and I know that we collect, the form is very long. We collect many things. And so it was taken. The attack started in 2014. It was discovered in 2018. So who says if they have access to your data now is useful now? Maybe they are not ready for you yet. Maybe they are waiting. The day you announce on social media that you have moved from this sector, you are now in the oil sector, now like, okay, your account might make sense to them now. So it's just for you to realize that it can happen anytime. And at the end of the day, in a country like Nigeria, where most of us are using our daddy's name, our husband's name, our children's name, our wife's name, hey, as password, you can imagine what happens if they have access to this information. So the next one, I'm going to look at the rights of data subject. A data subject is myself, yourself, once they collect your data. So there's a right outlined in the Act, and I want to quickly go by it. Right of data subject, right to information. You must be informed about how their data is going to be used. So if you're taking my information, you must inform how you're going to use it. I need to be informed. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I went for an interview somewhere. Somebody reached out to me that a company needed somebody in HR many years ago. And when I got it, they gave me a form. The form was very long. To start with, I sat at the reception, which was already making me feel that the reception was not a reception that had tables. It was a reception that had a table and 3 waiting chairs. So you're giving me a form. First of all, I'm like, so I'm supposed to fill this on my laps. Everybody's passing and going. But that wasn't the biggest issue. When I went to the form, they asked for my parents' details. They wanted to know my local government. They wanted to know if I had kids, their ages. They wanted to know so many things. And then I said to the lady that brought the form, who is in HR, of course, we later became friends. She's in HR mentorship now because I invited her that come and join this community and learn more. And I said to her, madam, that the role that I came for, number one, I said, sit down, let me level up. I said, the role that I came for, it sounds interesting, but I'm not even sure I'll take it because I'm actually working. But the fact is that you might make an offer that I don't want, and I might not even meet your requirements. But this is my data, I've already given it to you. So what do you want to use it for? And she could not explain. I was like, no, I'm not filling this form. That was where it went sour. I was not ready to. So you need to tell me how my data is going to be used. Right to access. Individuals can access their personal data held by organization. So if somebody submits a form to you in organization, in HR, and come back and says, HR, that's my form. Please, can I go through it again? Allow them to go through it. It's nothing like you have given it to me as my property, but he's going through it right in front of you. He's not going to tamper with it, because to hold it as if you're a witch and say no is to suggest that something else is going on. Why do you need it? And I've had a case where an employee came and said that a certificate that he gave us that he has lost his things, that can we make copies of the copies he gave us, that he wants to process and do affidavit, things like that. People have access. And if you go into the bank, I want to check this, I want to check that, not just bank, fintech, anywhere, as long as your data is there, you have the rights. You have the right to correction. Right to correction means that I can request that I think that what I gave you was incorrect. Can I make corrections? You understand? Of course, it's a function of your policy. You can't just come and tell me to come and change something in my file now unless I know what's up. You understand? But I'm just saying that if it happens, it is not every time that you say no. There are times when they will have a reason. And you must be able to accommodate by saying, okay, why do you need this? I hope you understand me. So another one is right to deletion. Right to deletion, that means I need to delete my data. And why would somebody say that? I'll give you an example. If you work in an organization for some time, after some time and you leave, we still hold your information. But most of this is a function of the data retention policy for how long they can hold it. But if you go into an organization to patronize them, and then later on you realize that, you know what, I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in this thing. I don't want to buy again. I'm not doing it again. And they now say, okay, no problem. We'll tear your form. You have the right to say, please, can you destroy that form? You have the right to say that. I need to delete it. And you have the right to say that after today, I don't want to ever hear from you, please. Because if I hear from you, I'm going to escalate. I'm going to report you. I'm just saying. So we're moving forward. And then beyond that, then before we move forward, another thing I want to highlight is the fact that sometimes in the course of our discussions with people will mention information to you that you really don't need to know. They will mistakenly mention to you because maybe they trust you, maybe they just feel like, okay. So what I want to say is that when you have access to information that you get by virtue of the privilege of your position, you need to guide it. One of the things that we are told in HR is that we are supposed to be trusted advisors. People need to be able to trust you with data. So I'll give you a quick example. I've had a lady who came to me and during her onboarding, she explained to me that she's going to need to give me another document that she didn't have immediately. I was very curious. What exactly is the issue? Hold on, something is happening to my slides. Let me pause to share and share again. I don't know what's going on. Just 1 minute, please. Once again, apologies for the break. So I had a young lady who was being onboarded by me, and she said to me she's going to bring a document later on. It turns out this was a very sad thing for me, so I've not forgotten for a long time. It turned out it's sad for me because she was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. You know, she had a good stature, she came with a good car, and you know, she was very okay, very well put together. And then she brought an affidavit. And it turns out that she had been married for 12 years. Within those 12 years, she had been admitted like thrice for domestic abuse. Her hand had been put in a cast. There were times when she couldn't work, when she was pregnant, when she was not pregnant, all sorts of issues. I got to read it because eventually she said, in case you're doubting me, that I'll bring the processes. So the documents from the court she shared with me, it turns out that eventually her family had to say, you know what, no matter what it's going to take, we're going through with a divorce. So she had an affidavit for her change of name because she had done some of her education before she married. She had gotten some courses after she married. So in trying to explain to me what happened and why, she shared those documents with me. And I remember saying to her, up to today, we're still friends. This is more than 6-7 years ago. I remember saying to her that at the end of the day, the name that you want us to know you is what I need to know. What should we call you? What I have in the affidavit is that you are now Miss XYZ. What I have on your biodata is this is your surname. It doesn't matter to me if this is your father's surname. It doesn't matter to me if it's your ex's surname. The important thing is that this is what you have disclosed to me. And from today onwards, that is what we're going to be used for you. And I remember saying to her that, please, as you are leaving my office, let it be known to you that if you hear this information downstairs after today, it is from you. Because as you've told me, I've forgotten it. Once it enters the file, that's the end of it. So I'm just saying that sometimes there's volume of information that you get into that you really don't need, but because of the virtue of your privilege, you have to be able to hold on to it. So I looked at password problems very quickly because passwords is one of the biggest issues that we have now. I spoke to ChatGPT. I went online just to check and see if this issue of passwords, is it a generational issue? Because I write passwords down and then I try to memorize them. I can't memorize, I go and write it somewhere. And then I spoke to younger people. I spoke to Gen Z. It turns out that at the end of the day, it's a common problem. So I'm just quickly highlighting this now, and I'll give you 2 minutes to read through and see if there's anything that relates to you there, while I also quickly check the chat box. So password problems, quickly run through this. Okay, so I think all of us would have seen what relates to us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond. It says many people still use simple, easily guessed passwords. If Nigeria was where this issue of Marriott has happened, a lot of us would be issues because this one says personal information pitfalls. There's an over-reliance on predictable personal information. Those of us that are Christians, we know there's a particular name that we must use. Those of us that go to a particular denomination, those of us that have particular children, there's so many words that are peculiar in our passwords. And at the end of the day, the problem is that those that are trying to hack or trying to monitor you also have an idea. Widespread password reuse. I'm one of those I used to do that until recently. I went through a course in data and cybersecurity, Lagos Business School, during the Women in Leadership. There's a program I went for, Women in Leadership Development Program. By the time they broke it, I realized that, man, whatever it will cost me to rearrange myself on password, I had to go ahead and do it. Then lack of complexity. Passwords often lack diverse character types. So we're going to quickly look at this romance and data privacy. We've looked at this on slide 1. For those that joined us a little bit, this is slide 2. So this is a case study that we need to look at quickly, and it's important for HR people to know that at the end of the day, you might be held accountable. So you need to understand where the breaches could come from. This is romance and data privacy 2. Alex is a senior exec at Nova PLC. His company is publicly quoted. He frequently chats with his colleague, Tola. So Alex and Tola work together. They chat together. They roll together. They do a lot of things together because they sit near each other in meetings in the office. One evening, Mrs. Alex sees their chat on her hubby's phone. And the message that Alex sent is what I highlighted in red for easy understanding. He said, "See, Yale Telecoms has approved an $830K budget. This is not Naira, $830K budget. That means $830,000 budget for phase 2. Let's celebrate the real way. Can we do Friday/Saturday? Mrs. Alex, as you're reading this text, what is this suggesting to you? Please read the rest of the case study. And the question is, how did this happen? And then Mrs. Alex misinterprets the conversation, and the next day, she posts a screenshot on social media accusing Tola of inappropriate behavior with Mr. Alex. He's my husband. Why is he chatting you? Why is he sending this? And you know, as in the case in a lot of issues where we have people who would rather not face the main person, the issue that she had was with the other lady. So the post goes viral, causing reputational damage to all parties involved and workplace tension. HR, who should be held accountable for the situation, and what are the risks involved, what policy is needed. So we're going to quickly look at this. So number 1, the first slide said, is there data privacy in marriage? Can I password my phone, my laptop, and say data privacy as a wife, as a husband, as a friend? Can I say, give my phone? I don't trust you. Or I trust you, but please, So looking at this and what happened as HR people online, I would appreciate your comments in the chat. Who should be held accountable for this? And when we say held accountable, who should be punished? That's it. Who should be sanctioned? Who is going to be held responsible for this issue? Because my company is publicly quoted, and now we're being famous for the wrong reasons. We're online, everybody is dragging me. There's a hashtag about my organization, and it's all because my employee's wife either doesn't trust her husband or stumble on what, or maybe because my employee sent a chat that could be misinterpreted. Who would you blame? Who would I hold responsible? So when I'm dragged into the office, and when I say drag, that's not literally when there's a meeting that says, okay, HR, corporate communications, we're going to sit down and think through. But at the end of this day, when we clean up this mess, somebody is responsible. Between you and I as HR people, who are you speaking to? So I'll check the chat box. I know who I would hold responsible. Okay, Adesumo Williams, love you. Thank you for being here. It says the employee should be held accountable. Okay. And Omonua, I can't love you enough. Thank you. The husband who's the employee. Okay, Aliu, I hear you. I feel you. The husband who's the employee. Omonua says hiding your password from your spouse might be risky. For this case, because the wife is not a staff of the organization, the hubby is to be held responsible. What am I holding the hubby responsible for? Mr. Alex. Elizabeth Akitonde, shout out to you. You said Mr. Alex, I believe you. So what could Mr. Alex have done differently? The employee, okay. It's like the eyes have it too. The employees have it. Because I've seen like folks say the employee, but okay. So the employee is held accountable. So the discussion with Alex after the brand communications and corporate team have sat down to draft our disclaimer, our one-to-one apology, the hobby is to be held responsible for his wife's action, the employee. Okay. I've seen enough employee. I really don't know what to say at this point. First of all, the channel of com should be considered. If it was sent in an unofficial channel, the employee that said it should be held responsible. Neither that was a work text clearly. Chinelo, thank you. Ijema, thank you. So we'll go back to what we're talking about then. So the responses that we have given as HR people shows that a lot of us think that it should have been the employee that should have been held accountable. Somebody has also said that hiding, passwording your phone for your spouse might be risky. So what do you do then? If Alex is one of those that thinks that I'm not going to password my phone because, I mean, she's my wife, for God's sake, she has seen me naked. What else is left to be hidden? I really don't want to password my phone. You can't have a policy that will interfere with their privacy issues in their house. So what would you do differently? So some organizations have policies around this. That is the essence of this discussion. As an HR person, yeah, I don't have rights over what you and your wife does. I don't even have rights over the mindset of the woman that is in your house. Neither do I have rights over the mindset of the man that is your best friend. This is speaking to us generally, but what can I do to protect myself? What I can do to protect myself is I can have policies. So when people are being onboarded into organization, we let them know that, number one, CUG is for work. This is your personal. But there are times when the lines get blurry and you don't know what to do. You need to quickly send a message. But the truth is that let the onboarded employee know that if you're married, though, if you have children, any XYZ on social media that is going to impact our organization might lead to XY. Let them know there's consequences so that Mrs. Alex will realize that beyond dragging Tola, I might end up dragging my husband's job. I hope you understand that. So very quickly, we're looking at key compliance requirements. The requirements for NDPA, under NDPA, you have requirements. One of them is there must be registration. Data controllers and processors of major importance must register with NDPC within 6 months. Within 6 months. You must have an DPO. NDPR requires, under NDPR, you're required to have a data protection officer who is responsible for internal compliance. The DPO is a data protection officer. He looks at your compliance, he assesses the risk, he advises you, and at the end of the day, he sorts out your audit. There's DPCO services. There are organizations that are licensed organizations who provide training, audits, and consulting to ensure there's compliance. They also exist. And there's annual audits. NDPA now expects you to do an audit every year. And by March 30, you're supposed to submit your compliance. This was taken from the site of NDPC. I'm sure you can see it. It says, protect your privacy, secure your future, building a data secure Nigeria. Anything that is listed as a requirement here is because they think it is necessary to build a data secure Nigeria. So if you have any grass is what they wrote here, it means that you're not in alignment with this and you need to be in alignment. So when is a DPO required? When is it, in case you're wondering, do I need a DPO? Why do I need a DCO? Sorry. Number one, if you're a government entity, ministries, departments, institutions, or agencies, I'm aware that Lagos State government is rolling out trainings over different local governments now. They were appointed officers for this role to make sure that they look at data. If you handle large-scale processing, you need a data protection officer. If you handle over 10,000 individuals yearly, or even below that, if you handle sensitive data that has to do with health, financial, biometric data, you request somebody. And if you have critical infrastructure, if you're involved in critical infrastructure, you also need somebody. So if you're here on the call and you're not sure if you need or not, as you go through this, I want to begin to proactively look at what needs to be done. Now we're going to look at consequence of violation. This is important for us because this is where HR will be called to the table at the end of the day. Number one, consequence of violation. Number one is reputation and damage. We have seen the case of Alex, how it has affected him. And I'm going to quickly go to the next slide because everyone that I highlighted in red, I have a slide for it. That's why I said the slides are many, but we're not talking through most of them. So loss of trust and business, reputation damage. Let me look at what Meta. This is Meta. It says Meta fired employee for sharing workplace info with wife just hours before his bonus payout. Please let that sink in. Meta is not in Nigeria because we like saying our bosses are toxic. We like saying that our environments are toxic. We like saying that people are just difficult, but this is Meta. We're not going to get into the argument of whether what Meta did or is doing right now currently is good or whether what America is going through is okay. We're not here for that. We're looking at that it can happen anywhere. And this is March 16, 2025. I actually went on LinkedIn to read about the guy, and it says Meta worker loses job for sharing publicly available info with wife. Let me rephrase that. He shared info that was publicly available. How they got to know is something that I'm very curious about, but I don't want to go into that. Apparently, they have a way of knowing what is sent. Of course, you know that your IT guy knows what you are sending. So the important thing was I sent it from his organization's device, sent to his wife that this is what's going to happen, and XYZ is going down like that. So he was fired for that, okay? So it shows that loss of trust and business, your business can lose out. You yourself as an employee, you can lose trust. There can be legal actions, there can be lawsuits. Domino Pizza is one of my favorite places to go to, but a few days ago, Domino Pizza was hit with a lawsuit, and I can only say that they were lucky that this was an employee, sorry, that this was a customer that only went to the court. It didn't call them out and go to NDPC. So let's quickly look at this. It says court orders firm to pay customer for data privacy breach. What happened? The Federal High Court in Abuja has delivered a precedent-setting judgment against Domino's Pizza, a restaurant owned and operated by Eat and Go, for using a customer's data for direct marketing purposes. Okay, so it was awarded 3 million. You can always read the story online. The summary of it was that they sent him direct unsolicited marketing messages via his phone without his consent. So if I work with Domino's Pizza, well, now that they're in the public space, they cannot say this is defamation, you understand? Because you also need to operate within the confines of the law because it's in public space. So if I go into your eatery and I fill out a form, I fill out a form because you said to me that you want my data, so I can put in, because I know that every time I go to Domino's with my children, we also go to this other one, I'll try to remember now, Scoops. I know that when you get there, they will usually give, that is Dodo Pizza, they will give you a form to fill. And it's not always, as far as I'm concerned, I've done that once like 2 years ago. So they have your number, they put it in their database. So every time you go, once they put it, they realize that, oh, you are here. And sometimes they will even say, the last time you came, you ordered X, Y, is that what you want? But apparently, beyond using that information for that, they started reaching out to the gentleman for other things. So if I wanted to buy a pizza, I'm sorry if there's background noise, it's raining in my area. So beyond buying a pizza, you're now hitting me to come and buy ice cream. I didn't go in for ice cream. And besides, the only reason I gave my number was because you said it's important for my meal, which was a pizza. They were looking at financial penalties. Financial penalties, this one has levels. It depends on your level. It says up to 2% of your annual revenue, Fidelity Bank. If somebody says up to 2% of my gross revenue for the year or my net for the year, it will make an impact. Looking at the bank, you might think that doesn't make an impact, but it's a major amount of money to chunk out for what could have been avoided. So up to 2% of your annual revenue, and then I'm going to show you what happens to Fidelity Bank for this same issue. So please, and then first of all, look at this slide. This is outlining what are the financial sanctions and the breakdown. The breakdown says, please, I'll allow you to go through 2%. Just read very quick. So I think you've gone through 2% of your penalty, 10 million if you're a major processor, okay? 2 million for other entities. Let's assume that your portfolio is not big like that. And for you to know that it's not only Nigeria. GDPR, that's for Europe. 20 million euro or 4% of global revenue. So the other financial penalties that might happen depending on the gravity. Okay, but I just want you to understand that there's non-compliance with the NDPA can lead to severe consequences for your businesses. That's what I need you to understand. And we'll tie it to what HR needs to do. So I'm going to go back to the initial slide where I said financial penalties. I mentioned Fidelity Bank. Now, look at my next slide. Data breach, FG slams 400 million naira fine on 4 banks. 400 million is not 400 naira. It's not 400,000. It's 400 million fine on 4 banks and others. This is the 12th of June, 2024. And look at what it says about Fidelity Bank now. I'll just give you a moment to let it sink. So if I'm fined for a breach, it's number one. Secondly, my name goes down in the archives as being one of the scapegoats for NDPC. There are certain reputations that I would rather not have if it was possible, and I hope you'll agree with me. So I'm going to quickly go back to my slide so I will see what happens. Of course, Fidelity Bank was not the only one. It says FG slams 400 million fine on 4 banks, others. When I was having a discussion with a very senior person who is one of the consultants that worked with the NDPC, he mentioned to me that after the issue of Fidelity Bank, that there was a time when they actually had a discussion, and some of the banks were of the opinion that if it was possible, instead of publicizing their names, that they should first discuss with them first, that they would rather that they get their sanctions and they sort it out without this publicity, because there's publicity that is good and there's one that is bad. The next one is enforcement actions, where they can come in and enforce that, okay, this is what you have done wrong, and this is what we're going to do. And for that, I'm going to show you Soko Loan. Some of us that normally borrow money on the apps, I'm sure you have come across this. I've not borrowed money on the app, but I've received text from app loan providers who have said, this person is a rapist, this person is a killer, he's on the run, he borrowed money, he escaped. I've seen that before. And then at the end of the day, what it means is that they are putting this person's name out. So NITDA sanctions Soko Loan for privacy invasion. This was a sanction, August 17, 2021. That was under the NDPR. And look at the place that is highlighted. It already says that an online lending platform, Soko Lending Company, but now for privacy, it now says this action was taken after receiving series of complaints against the company for unauthorized disclosures, failure to protect personal data, and defamation of character, as well as carrying out necessary due diligence as enshrined in NDPR. So they were fined on all of those issues. So the next slide is very quickly, we're looking at, so that I keep trying to link it to global, what happens globally, so that we know that it's not just Nigeria. These are 20 biggest GDPR fines over a period, and this is August 2024. I have a slide that says 20, but I only did a screenshot of maybe 10. And if you look at this slide, you'll see some of your favorites on this slide. In fact, one of these favorites on this slide was recently called out in Nigeria too. I've not mentioned names. I'm just saying that they're some of our favorites that we know very well. So look at the amount. And look at the amount of money that people have paid out. Well, okay. So Meta Platform Ireland, 1.2 billion euro. Who does that? Who pays that? Amazon Europe, 746 million euros. So you begin to wonder that, okay, if I'm paying this in fines, how much am I making in revenue? I just want you to realize that it's not just here, it's happening everywhere. And to buttress this, I'll show you a slide that talks about one of these people on this particular list who is having the same issues in Nigeria. So there you have it. Nigeria, Meta fined $220 million for violating privacy laws. Of course, when I saw this figure, that was last year. There's another one going on now, because recently in the last 1 week, NDPC, the commissioner, has spoken about TikTok, he has spoken about WhatsApp. When I saw this figure, this time, that was last year, July 22, I tried to calculate 220 million in Naira. I was one of those, I was like, this money is not plenty. By the time they pay this money, sure, they will not begin to charge us to use Facebook and other things. But the truth is that what they did is wrong. And this is a very brief breakdown of what they did. It was the FCCPC that went after them. Okay, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, they went after them. But they now said something that is very important here. They said they violated local laws on data protection and consumer privacy. Of course, the FCCPC looks out for the consumers, but data protection is also part of what consumers are entitled to. So that was what happened. This is just for you to realize that it's not just here. So now we get to the most critical part for HR. In the next 20 minutes, we'll quickly sort this out and move on. So consequence management, that's why we are here. What does consequence management mean? I'll quickly read what I got. It says this term, while not a single word in the Oxford Dictionary, it implies a proactive approach to understanding and mitigating potential negative outcomes of effects, events, action, or decisions. In summary, consequence management. I'm going to use Domino as an example. Because of the sheer volume of companies that we have in Nigeria, there are chances that my company and your company, those of us that work in SMEs, hear me, my company and your company might never come under the radar of NDPC for a very long time, because by virtue of the sheer number of companies that we have in CAC, even if they are picking them alphabetically, it will take time before it gets to my turn. If they are picking them by their balance sheets, it will take time. If they are picking them even by location, that okay, which side of Lagos are you on, the mainland, island, Ikoyi, whatever, banana, it will take time. But the truth is that the Act makes provision that the moment a breach is committed, the moment somebody escalates that you have breached their privacy, the NDPC must be informed. Okay, they must be informed. So it means that you only need one person to escalate your matter, and then you realize that, okay, even though you are very far on their list, even though you are not on their to-do list, they'll come for you. So I said HR and NDPA 2023. This is us looking at what makes it important for me and you to understand this law. After the NDPA 20 was signed on June 12, it bestowed responsibility on certain officers who are gatekeepers in the organization to proactively assess their compliance level to avoid any liability. HR is to review and ensure that data collection forms are modified to include data privacy clauses. So if you're giving out a form, please fill this form. You must state it clearly there that this data is going to be used in line with NDPA. And the moment you're committing yourself, it means that if anything happens, they'll come back and meet you. So before you put out a form, before you even do that, put your house in order. You understand? So we're looking at what can HR do differently. So I'll tell you what I did, and then we'll move to the next slide. What I did, because number one, in the recent times, if you want to do business with Lagos State government, it is now a requirement that your audit, your compliance audit, that shows that NDPC has gone through what you're doing and they're okay with you, you need to submit it. Of course, I knew that I couldn't do that that audit on my own. So I reached out to one of the people I'll call a veteran in the industry. And our first discussion was, sir, I am aware of this. My company wants to start doing, my company will be involved in LASG. We know that Lagos State government is very particular, they're very proactive, and they're always very particular at upholding standards. So I know this will be a requirement. Then number two, there's even a need for us to also understand that the compliance that we're supposed to achieve, how do we go about it? So the first discussion we had with him was him saying that, okay, do you have any policies? What policies do you have? What sanctions do you have in place? How many people are on your payroll? How many people are in this other location? And that was the time when we were trying to expand into another business that will require us taking on board a certain number of formally outsourced people. So I knew that we needed help. So, you know, it took us through the process. There's a checklist for compliance. We went through it. So I'm doing this ahead of time. I want to be proactive. I know that for the next 1 year, they might never come to my company. But at the end of the day, Domino did not go to NDPC. NDPA might not have been on the top 10 to-do list of the HR people or the compliance or the legal team in Domino's. But one young man brought to their doorstep. And then what happens at the moment, because the act provides that once there's a breach, you must escalate. The moment it was escalated in the court, he got a judgment. Supposing he took a report and filed it at NDPC, let me tell you what would have happened. They'll come in, they'll first of all check. The commissioner for NDPC was talking some days ago, and he said that NDPC works sometimes like what happens on the road. That if you mistakenly maybe do something wrong on the road, let's assume that you moved before the light was green, or you did anything and they tell you to park. He said, do you realize that even though your offense was XYZ that we all know, they have the right to say, can I see your driving license? Let's even confirm whether you are licensed to drive. And then they might go further and say, can I see your ID card? Because the license says, this is your name, this is your age, I believe you. But this car that you're driving, is it your car? You might say it's a company car. Okay, can I see your ID card to know that you're an employee? So he was saying that the truth is that the moment we are now forced to come and look at you, we now begin to beam searchlight on everything. So even though you think that you're compliant, you also need to sit down and find a way to assess yourself, assess your compliance level. It's not going to hurt you to reach out to any consultant, and please, could you assess us? It's not going to hurt you to be prepared, just to be on the safe side, just for yourself. Like I said, because of the sheer number of companies, they might never come to you, but supposing they come, if tomorrow somebody still takes a letter to NDPC regarding this other company and they come, at that point, they will not say, okay, bring out your policies. What are your processes? What are the procedures? And at that point, you now realize that that list for audit, that compliance for audit list that you didn't think was your business, you now realize that you need to rush to the office to ask for it. You now begin to run up and down. And I say to people that when I'm negotiating in life, I'd rather negotiate from the point of want, not from the point of need. I want this. There's a way you go about negotiating. When you now need it, are you under pressure? Anything can happen. So this is an email graph very quickly. Your company has a 3,000 strong staff strength. Management has resolved to outsource junior cadres by 1st of June, but they are yet to announce. By 1st of June, but they are yet to announce. So the head of special projects was going to send a strategy folder to his team. And he sends a folder, he goes to his laptop, he picks a strategy folder and sends to his team. And it turns out that what was in that strategy folder was not the strategy for his project team. It was, read it, proposed layoff and restructuring. Is there a remedy? This is for us HR people, because like I said, what you need to do with NDPC, it's between you and your organization proactively saying, okay, let's get the list, let's begin to check, let's look at our policies. But an HR person who is also involved in formulating policies, enforcing, upholding, and driving a culture, what can you do differently? So the strategy folder that I had was the wrong one. It said proposed layoff and restructuring. What do you think will happen? And of course, certain names on that list are also among his team now. So is there a remedy? Is there any remedy whatsoever? We call it an email graph. It was a mistake, but it's a costly one. So we have policies around these things. policies will save your life, because there will be a day when they'll say, HR, are you aware that this is happening? And then what do you say? You're aware, but what can we do differently? So is there a remedy? So special project, before you click and send, what should you do? So we have a policy that talks about emails. Crazy policy, but I thought it was important to spell out and cover everything. We have a policy that talks about clear desk. And when you're leaving for the evening, please don't even leave any paper. Just lock everything. Whether they are useful, just lock everything. I don't want any stress in this life, you understand? And so, but when you send the wrong folder, by example, what you've done is, it's a 3,000 strong strap. There's so many. It could lead to chaos. It could lead to a lot of quiet quitting. It will lead to loud quitting. But the truth is that it could be avoided if we're a little bit more careful. And as HR, we're going to be called upon from time to time to lead our organizations. The next slide that I'm going to look at is one that I think all of us need to now think through, and I'll appreciate your response in the chat box. Who shared it? This is a real life case study, and it's about HR. This is about HR. It's not about any other department. The HR department of Zeta Bank is working on employee performance bonuses. On February, I omitted the date, the HR manager emails the finance team a file containing employee names and bonus amount. That means we have gone through we've agreed on KPIs earlier on, we've gone through the appraisals, we've signed off, dotted the T's, and then we have gone back to compute based on our policy. And then the breakdown of those who are eligible for bonuses goes to finance from you. On February 7, an employee from another department mentions the exact bonus amount of a senior colleague during lunch in the canteen. The senior colleague escalates to HR officially that, dear HR, it has come to my notice that XYZ Institutional Department has access to the information regarding my pay, which I consider to be confidential. Could you kindly advise, 1, how this came about, 2, what you are going to do about it? The question is, how did the bonus leak? What we done differently? So please, HR people on the call, how did the bonus leak? I swear to you that if I was the HR in that office, it did not leak from me. That one I know for a fact. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it did not come from me. So let me speak on behalf of HR that it did not come from HR. So how could it have gotten? So we said that the bonuses were emailed to finance. And another employee, you're in procurement, your internal audits, and you now mentioned that, bros, that if we will not be coding, we already know that you're getting a windfall. That because you particularly, what you're getting is nothing less than 500,000. And the guy is getting 500 million and he's getting 500K and 10K on top. So how did the bonus leak? What could be done differently? HR people on the call, I will give us a minute if you want to respond. How do you think it leaked? Please, it was not HR. I'm speaking for HR. It didn't come from us. Who else could have done it? Do you have an idea? Who would you hold responsible? So I'm going to tell you what happened so that we don't take our time. We got to a point where we had to investigate, but sometimes the investigation can always be by the book. You have to sometimes use what you call unorthodox method. My dear, you said recall at the speed of light, costly mistake. Such information leak is sensitive. It's sensitive, but it had gone out. What can I do differently? That was the question. And so, on professional members of the finance team, you can leak about the finance team, management friends. I'll speak for my own management. No, I am privileged to work with somebody who is very circumspect with his words. And in this particular case, this is not my organization. I'm just saying that I can speak for some people. So I'll tell you what happened. This particular document was shared with HR, was shared with finance, and a copy was sent to internal audit, not by HR, by finance. When they were done, they sent it to them. I worked in a company years ago where after we're done with all our payroll and everything, if the management does not see the green barrel of internal control, forget it, nobody's paid. So in this case, when they were done, they forwarded to internal control. The boss in internal control, true life story, printed a copy. He was like, I'm tired, let me take it home and go through. He printed a copy. He printed a copy and took it home. Whether he worked on it at home, I don't know. But this is how the story went. And it took time to get to the bottom of it. But the young man that made the mistake of opening his mouth, which is why I said information, sometimes you get information by virtue of the privilege of where you are. Learn how to keep it. If you had not spoken, nobody would have known. What happened was that when they were resuming the following day, the head of internal control parked his car. Okay. next to another officer. And the officer says, I said I bought this yesterday. Please, can you give me a copy? And he picks a copy and takes it upstairs. Do you know that at the end of the day, I opened the newspaper and I saw a copy of this printed out inside. What do I do? Number one, my name is not even on the list. So what do I do? So I'll tell you how the story went. Eventually, I saw it in the newspaper. I realized that, or more, this is a serious matter. So I quickly put in an envelope. And I'm like, how do I do it? So I give it to somebody, I say, this envelope, go and give this person immediately. I call, you're not on seat. And I'm like, I don't want to hold this thing. So I give it to somebody in my office. The young man who took the envelope, it's possible that maybe the body language, it's possible that he observed, and it's possible that the person that came across to this might have been like, you know how we are in Nigeria, we're like, But Igbo man doesn't do like that. There's a way they'll do their own. It's possible, but whatever it is, the young man said that on his way downstairs, he doesn't want to lie. That he actually opened it. I was like, what is this thing? And so HR had the job of going to now walk backwards because the email had gone on. The MD was aware, it had been discussed in Manco meeting that this happened, one thing. So we had to go back and say, okay, we're going to go over it. I went back to his boss and said, he says that mistakenly, you gave him some documents to deliver and he checked it mistakenly. Of course, if you mistakenly check it, must you mistakenly blow the alarm? That's another thing. But I'm just saying that in terms of holding documents. So I'm looking at whose laptop has the greatest potential for damage. Chief of staff to the MD CEO, the CFO, head of human resources, head admin and corporate services, and to sit on the call, whose laptop has the greatest potential for damage if it gets lost. If your laptop goes missing today, if it gets into the wrong hands, whose laptop has the greatest potential for damage? Is it the chief of staff to MDCO who listens to the MDCO, who is aware of every conversation, who is more or less like his man Friday, always there? Is it the CFO who sits on your revenue, your figures, who could either sink or swim the organization? Is it the head of HR who has access and knows inside your personal business and the official business? Is it the head of admin and corporate services? Whose laptop can give you the greatest damage? Because I'm an HR person, I might be biased. So let me see what my other colleagues are saying on the call, and then we'll move. So if somebody says, laptop lost, and you're like, please, whose laptop? Whose laptop? And you say, admin and corporate service, will you be like, yeah. Or will you be like, okay now. So Ijoma, thank you very much. Elizabeth, thank you. Blessing, Oluwalu, thank you. They all have, at least it's all of the above. Bros, Nkonju, it's not the same for everybody. We're talking about the greatest potential damage. CFO, I agree. Head of HR, I agree. Head admin and corporate services, I agree. MCO, I agree. I'm going to give you one instance that happened. There's a very senior person in the organization that was involved in fraudulent activities. At the end of the day, he was called into Manco meeting, we had a discussion, and he was advised to resign. He could have become a police but advised to resign, and he left. Years later, he was appointed to a very, very good position. Well, of course, he had left or he had moved on. You understand? He was appointed to a bigger position. At the end of the day, his performance is one side. What he did and almost ended up in the arms of the law, nobody will ever know unless they have access to his file. There are some documents that you have in HR that could scatter families. I'll tell you of another instance. I have somebody who actually came to me and said, Ma, that we need to discuss, there's an issue we need to discuss. I'll try to go over this very carefully so that you understand. He's a married colleague. He has 3 children. I know his family. And then he says to me that he has just been delivered of twins. He's been delivered of twins. Like how? I'm like, and then he had to take them to say, it's not my wife, but it's a young lady. I'm marrying her. Her family have done everything, but Madam doesn't know. So what do you need me to do? And he explains to me that the cost of healthcare is an issue that he needs to begin to, from his pocket, look after. He said even when she was doing antenatal, because he didn't want to sell anybody, that he knows what he incurred. And that he was just thanking God that she didn't go through CS, that he doesn't know what he would have done. Long story short, he wants us to put them on his HMO. I said, boss, HMO is 4 people. HMO is 4 people currently. I'm not saying in my organization, I'm saying before. one of my former places. HMO is 4 people. And he was like, how would I do that? I said, well, you know how many children you have? You have a wife, what will you do differently? And he says to me that it doesn't matter, but what he will do is that he wants to put the babies on the list. And he will remove the 2 other children, that they are older and their mom is also working. Okay. Now, it is not time for me to act like a witch and try to be morally above him and say, how? That is not why he came. It's actually his own data. So I said, bro, you know what we're going to do? You go and put this in writing. Because our policy says born dependence. It doesn't say whether it is children born by wife 1 or wife 2 or wife 3. You understand? And they just put it in writing. Just to cover me. That I hereby apply. I have recently welcomed a set of twins into my family. Nobody's going to take X-ray to your family. I'm not a party to discussions that are not going to do me any good or the business any good. And so put it that you have recently been delivered our twins and you want to put them on the HM that for this you're going to request and will remove eventually. If by any mistake or error, somebody saw that on my table or somebody told his wife, do you think she'll see me in town next time and smile? Man, she will join us together and deal with us. You understand? Because she is that he had not told her. If he has told her tomorrow, I don't know. But that was it. And then I now had the responsibility of telling the MD that this person has discussed this with me. In case I'm not here tomorrow, in case I'm here tomorrow, I have his document. It's in the file. And we're going to go ahead. You know, every month we change. Every month we do what we call remove and additions on our HM. We did what we needed to do. That's just an example. Many other things, too many other things that your documents contain. But let's move. Boss, you said my eyes have seen. So your role in data protection, this is where we're close to rounding up. Employee training, train all staff on data protection practice and cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a topic that I love, but we don't have the time. It has to be a separate thing. So train everybody. And I'm saying everybody for a reason. There's in my office at a time, we divided our data. Somebody who is a little bit senior does the mid-level. The junior person does the junior stuff, and then somebody who is much senior does what's just to be sure that you're accountable. If anything goes out, if anything, we know who to hold. So we had an intern who came very smart, very brilliant, and then we said, okay, you can handle the drivers. We use the HRIS, but for everything we have on the HRIS, we have physical documents that we keep securely. And so most of the drivers don't have what you call official email. They cannot log in to the HRIS. So she take their data and onboard them. She onboard them, and then they now have access. I give them, and then she send the password to log into them. And then at the time, I said to her that anytime the intern worked with me directly, so she picked a day for filing. I said to her that any day you want to file and I'm not around, just lock the door. Don't just lock it, because we know that when people stand on HR, they're already looking at this, that. Just lock the door. If anybody tries to say, this is what HR said I should do, and that's what she's been doing. And it was a standing rule that if you're working on files in my office and anybody locks the door, even before they knock, any file you bring must always be upside down. I said, because somebody will come in and see somebody's file on your table, and before you know it, they'll go and say, HR is going through your file. They don't know what you're looking for. Maybe you're just finding a driver's sick leave. Maybe you're just finding his request for leave. Don't even let people see that you're touching their data. So we did that. I'll give you the example of a pilot. In my office, we call drivers pilot. And this is very critical because I'm going to get to a portion where we talk about drivers as we move towards the end. A lady went to an organization, not in my organization, and while she was leaving and she was going out, a driver went to her. He said hello to her. I said, ma, that I have seen you here before, but I just want to say to you that I know that your company is going to start hiring XYZ. As a matter of fact, the company was one of the telecoms. This company was an outsourcing company for them. But I'm interested in moving to that organization. The woman was shocked. Number one, how do you know who I am? How do you know I can help you? But she was very smart. She said, okay, no problem. Your number, can I have your number? I'll call you. You know, said, ma, if you don't call me, can I call you? She said, don't worry. He said, because I can easily get your number. And right there, he declared that he noticed that when she filled the register, that she came from XYZ Telecoms. And he was confident telling her that I can actually get your number, but ma, please, ma, try and call me. Don't call me, I'll call you. So she went to office, she sent a chat to him and said, we met. I'm just curious, how did you get my details? And he explained to her. Is that okay? And then she came back to the organization and raised a hell. I heard it from a third party that is close to a third party. The first thing I did was that, you see that register? That was my former organization, former. There's that register. No, but we're moving it from the gate. It is going to be with the front desk. And Madam Front Desk, see, what you're going to do is that you bring it out when it is required. And once they finish filling it, keep it. Is that okay? Of course, I worked in a place where every 3 o'clock, the front desk person was required to begin to update the data of everybody that came. So she has, she has the data. And so she loads it. So that kind of data is something that somebody could easily just take away and use for anything. But I'm just saying it. So I'll now tell you the flip side of this story. Because I have KSS with the drivers in my organization, we have what we call a drivers hangar. We call them pilots. So every quarter we sit together. We just catch up, generally remind ourselves of policies. It's not the town hall meeting. We just generally just give them that access. But we do it quarterly because it's an expense. Because after we share malt and other things, and so every quarter one of them will give talks about what they need to do. One of them will give the talk, and we will just admit it. We'll sit. HR will sit. I make a point of being there. Just so it doesn't seem as if it's only the high-level meetings that I go to. And then I gave an instance about the issue of data. I spoke to them about data, and I gave this guy's example that this is what a guy did. He's a driver. He lounges around the reception, and this is what he said. I know what one of our pilots said. He said, the guy is not smart. There's no need of him to have even gone to meet the madam now. That's why he could have chatted that secretly. I'm like, Uncle, is that your mindset? You don't even see anything wrong. He said, actually, I said, man, you know that when people are looking for things, the way you look for things. No problem. So I spoke to the front desk person. I said, I know that, once in a while, people will stop by and say hello. Just make sure that as soon as you're done with this register, you're keeping it. It's not going to be that somebody's data. And if you notice on HR mentorship group too, once in a while, people will come and say, please, does anybody have the number for this company, for that company? And somebody will think they are helping and drop the number. Immediately, the admins will delete. Because we don't want it to happen that somebody will mention that somebody got my number and said it was dropped on your platform. We have a responsibility. So access control, limit access to sensitive data, your HMO, your health records, your salaries, and then have security settings on your phone, laptop, and storage. Have security settings. People shouldn't be able to just access it easily. Update your policy. There's a data retention policy. It talks about how long do we keep data that we're not needing, how long before we trash it. There's an exit policy on access. I'm aware of a story where somebody had left the organization. They forgot to remove him from the WhatsApp group. And on that WhatsApp group, I mean, being on somebody's WhatsApp group for 1 month, there's a whole lot of information that you gather until the guy decides to exit himself because there were so many, nobody noticed. So we have an SOP. My HR plan has an SOP, corporate services SOP, and then one of the things is exit. Immediately disable this, disable that, remove this. There's a list that you need to tick off immediately. Then we also have policies on asset usage policy. How do you use your assets? If it's a company asset, I worked in a place where only those that have cars will take their laptop home. If you don't have a car, you leave your laptop in the office. I've also worked in a place where there's hybrid, so you need to take a laptop home. And I also know a colleague that where they work, they do half of the week. The other half, the company organizes Uber sharing for the staff to take everybody home with their laptop to make sure that they are safe. Walk around this thing. And then your non-disclosure agreement, is it, we sign it, but we still disclose. So you need to walk through it by having this discussion with your employees, let them understand the importance of what they are doing and what it could cost the organization. And then on references, I need to say this here, if anybody calls you and says or sends a mail that this person said he worked in your organization, can you please confirm his salary? It is a no, stop it. I've had somebody who is very senior reach out to me and say, HR, because whatever your role, whatever your level, HR is HR in terms of the way people will think and call you. So this one was, he called a long time ago. He's in the financial sector and said that when I was discussing with them, I got to understand that they have a budget for this salary. And I don't want to be shortchanged. So I told them that's what I'm earning. What can you do for me? I said, I won't do anything for you. I don't need to do anything for you. I don't need to, because number one, I'm not going to quote a wrong salary. The truth is I'm not even quoting any salary. I said, what do they need? They said they are going to be sending me a document. I said, don't worry. And when the documents came, did he work? Yes. Would you hire him again? Yes. How was his character? I said, well, he was upright. He dotted all his T's. He delivered on his deliverables. WhatsApp seeing him go. And then they said, can you confirm his last? I said, no. Our company is compliant to the NDPA. Then it was NDPR. We do not disclose confidential information. And I said to him that, I know you, I know your worth. If they cannot trust your word, they don't need you. You will go to another place. So please, in your reference, you don't owe anybody the obligation of disclosing what's confidential. Tell them that Data Privacy Act for, you're not supposed to do that. And then there must be regular audits. Of course, you can't do an audit if you don't know what to audit. So get somebody who is in the field, who is in the sector, somebody who is very much ingrained in the system, and talk to them. Just, even if it's just to get a list, so that you begin to check your policies to make sure that, okay, God forbid that somebody will just allow them to be a satellite on you, what you do. Then cyber security. A lot of us are signing up for cookies that we'll never eat. There's ransomware. Understand what it means and make sure that you don't allow your organization to be exposed to this. There's phishing. People will pretend to be who they are not. I've said to my team that if you're trying to log into a site, either in your house or your own personal laptop, if you don't see this S behind the HTTP, know that it is your safety and your security that is lost already. If you go ahead and log in, you're at risk. Just monitor little things like that. And then I said secure your Wi-Fi networks. Make sure that your Wi-Fi network is secured. I worked in a place where it was the driver of an expatriate next door that told a driver in an organization, yeah, we moved to the hotel newly then, that he has been using our Wi-Fi for like so long, but suddenly he doesn't understand what happened to the Wi-Fi. Is the Wi-Fi bad? See audacity. He's asking, is our Wi-Fi bad? Because his organ has been complaining. Wonderful. And then the person that did the installation of the Wi-Fi was not the person we called. We called the external consultant that was part of the project team from the beginning. He said, there's no password on this Wi-Fi. There's no password. Okay. It was a mistake. He forgot. But supposing we have a policy around that, supposing we have sanctions around that, I'm just saying that these are things that can happen. So somebody needs to, that's why you have friends who will say, I load 40 gig every month. And when they said, I'm like, how many of you, are you sure you know how many of you are using it? You better find out. So check two-factor authentication. WhatsApp is always saying that. So let's do a two-factor. Update your software and systems. Don't make it vulnerable to attacks that you can avoid. And then love your IT team. Say that again. Love your IT team. Love them. Love them. Treat them with love because you need them. There's nothing I'm talking about now around digital protection, data privacy that you can actually do alone. You need them. You need them to work with you. And if you're in a place where the way the organization is running, you don't think that you can get their collaboration because of the toxic environment, both of you need to start looking for something else. So practical security measures, I just have 2 slides on this. Secure your communications. You get some emails from organizations where they write that this email is meant only for the recipient. If it falls into your hand by any mistake, so you need to sit down and look at your email. Is your email just going out with only your name and the company name and you're not putting a disclaimer there? So somebody could forward to the wrong person and it will still come and bounce on you. Talk to your IT guy. Think before you press send. That goes back to that our folder of strategy. Before you press send on any sensitive information, think before you press send. I tell people that reply all button, if you're not careful, it could become your destroy all button. There are mails that get to you that when you read, you don't need to send the reply to everybody again. You're supposed to just delete every other person, send what you got to somebody who's going to clarify or confirm before you now go back and send to everybody. But sometimes you forget. And information that was not supposed to even be challenged or discussed or mentioned, it goes to reply all and it becomes destroy all. Be careful. There's a limit to how long your email can go before you can retrieve. And sometimes you don't even realize what you've done until later on. So before you press send, find a way to step back and think. Then your lock on laptops and phones, I've said that earlier, use strong passwords and protect them. There's no point having a password that is strong if you write it and put it under your table inside your diary. Some of you will put a password inside the diary, and the day that you don't expect, you send somebody to go and bring that diary. You are not in the office. Please, can you check my diary? I need one information, and they come across it. So what was the point? And the laptop is in the office. Shut down the laptop when not in use. We like to hibernate. Why are you hibernating? If the laptop was you, would you hibernate? You shut it down, you will sleep. Then issue official device. I worked in a place where they did not issue an official laptop in time. They said this guy can work from home with his laptop, but the IT guy was to resign. The IT guy resigned. Nobody else came in to issue another device. The guy that was on board itself decided to resign, and I had also left. So I remember thinking in my house that, wow, all the data on that guy's laptop is just like that. Of course, if he's working with the official laptop, you could also copy it. But I'm just saying that minimize the risk anyway by issuing an official device so that, and you that you're using official devices, make sure that as much as possible, use the cloud. So the next one is data in motion, safeguard your information, public Wi-Fi. I don't use it. And if I'm using it, it's not my phone. Maybe it's a phone that I want to throw away. I don't even use it because that free Wi-Fi could give you a free virus. And then those, please, I have a flash from, go and give it to the IT guy. Let him use it. I don't have it. I'd rather send it by email. That's things that people say, let me go, please, not my system, please. I'm not ready to. You understand? So just be protected. Then official, apart from the official devices that you're issuing, make sure that the IT guy is also involved in making sure that we are saving. My organization has an IT guy whose job is to go around to make sure that you're not saving to the PC. Sometimes you don't just save, but if you save it to the cloud, you can retrieve it anywhere from any location. And if anything happens to your laptop, unless somebody gets a password and actually opens it, they will never have access to it. But let's even assume they even have access to your laptop, and they're by any means able to. If they don't have access to your G drive, what happens? But some of us leave all the drives open, and the laptop is also open. Insider threats, be vigilant about disgruntled employees who might exploit some weaknesses. The truth is that you cannot always win. But I've said it here that business safety is more important than your notice period. I'm going to my last slide now. The business safety is more important. If somebody is disgruntled, if somebody is showing attitude, if somebody is behaving in a manner that you're suspicious about, sometimes it's not compulsory that they must spend 1 month. Because that additional 1 month, to put in another 1 or 2 years problem. You understand? So there are times when you tell Manuel that, please, I think we need to let him go. That is, so you have cases where a guy says, I need to leave, and the manager is like, no, he has not given notice. You might need to step in and say, sir, I think we need to let him go. Ma, I think for this reason, I think we need to let him go. But I'll make sure that he does a handing over so that within the next 48 hours, and then if we need him, we'll reach out to him. Because the moment he's staying, please. So this is just an example of what I spoke about. I just want to show you very briefly that it happens. This says fired employee gets paid back by deleting thousands of hours of work. So I'll tell you what happened. This is the part of the story. It says fired employee gets paid back by deleting thousands of hours of work after discovering his team was still using his folder. This is one of the areas where your exit policy failed. So apparently, when they started the project, he used his Google Drive. I know that in Lagos State, one of the policies that they are pushing under their data protection is that you must use the official email for everything. It must be official for everything. But some of us don't have that. So in this case, what he even did was he used his personal drive, he sent some doc, and they started using the drive, and they forgot. You know, the drive has become like their wardrobe. Just go there to pick a shirt, go there, pick a blouse. And when he left, he realized they were still using it. One day, one night, bro said delete it. Imagine somebody deletes. And when I read it, I couldn't process it because during COVID, the team that was working with them, we did everything on our Google Drive. Every document, everything, everybody has access. In my mind, I was like, if somebody had deleted that, if one of us had deleted that, where would I have started from? Because the cloud is supposed to be the backup of my backup here. So it can happen. So the last folder talks about the last thing I want to say about practical security measures. Do not use WhatsApp to ruin your career. Please. It's very important. WhatsApp has become the destroyer of many things now. Maintain professional and personal boundaries in your chats. If you're chatting a colleague and it has to do with official information, minimize the personal effects that you are putting there. Treat your CUG as if one day the owner of the business can say, you know what, hand over your phone to me. If somebody says hand over the CUG to me today, it will be a very unusual situation because when I'm leaving, I usually give notice period and move on. But God forbid there's something, for example, when fraud happens in an organization, people don't stop to think. They run over everybody. Everybody becomes a suspect. So if somebody takes your CUG and goes through, what would they find there? Your personal phone, you could still struggle that is my own. I'm not giving the password, but CUG is their property now. So why are you loading nonsense or in? So maintain that professional and personal boundaries. Sometimes it gets blurry, but think about your life and your reputation. Then take responsibility for printed documents. A head of department printed the document that was so sensitive about bonus payment that was not going to everybody. He printed and put in a newspaper. He borrowed another colleague the newspaper, and it led to what I'll call a mess, and then dispose with caution. I got a video a long time ago. I used it in a session, and they rounded up some criminals who went to an area. And one of the things the guy said then was that they would go to a particular organization that was always doing interviews, and that they would go through their trash, and they used to pack CVs. And that from the CVs, they will begin to check. You know, there are some addresses on CVs that tells you something. A lot of addresses will tell you something, but that was like, I think that was 2019 or 2020. Now, what I said was that we don't even need to address. So just say Lagos, Mainland, Lagos Island. There are cases where you need to state it, but not always. So if you're going to put Lagos, Mainland, and Island, nothing. But those people that will put, telling me that you're living in one estate, the guy said they go through, and that is one of the primary places where they got the information. Now, the HR that took CV and just tore them into two is also guilty. So my next point says, brand assets are your assets. In printing business cards for people, the company's number comes first. So in case they leave, the number is always there. But don't let me jump ahead of myself. Responsibility. There must be responsibility and loyalty in handling sensitive issues. I'm going to tell you a story as I close. Understand your leadership. Know what to share and what not to share. It's important that you know. Your brand assets, like your phone numbers, they're your assets. So in doing cards for people, make sure that even though you're putting my number because I'm a salesperson, put your number first. And in my organization, they know it's part of the policy that we transfer numbers. Numbers are transferable. And I'm saying this because there are some roles that will always be there. front desk will always be there. So transfer the number. We give you a CUG, but I'm not getting a new CUG for you, except that when we are going to 9Mobile, it became a case of that you must always use somebody's NIN. And so we said we'll register certain lines officially, and we'll keep on transferring them. So if I'm not there tomorrow, the next person. So it's not that I go to NSITF and fill a form and put my number and they call for compliance issues and I've left with the phone. The number is no longer there. You know, so it's part of our policy that we transfer certain numbers. It's your asset. Have an external backup for your IT team. Have an external backup for your IT team. It's important. Back up your backup. Back up your backup. It's so critical. I'll give you a quick example. I worked in a place where after the guy left, they didn't replace him immediately. But the external IT came in and he called me and showed me something. Because there was no IT on site. He showed me something and I took that lesson away. He said, this guy has mapped his mails to the personal mails. So everything that goes out from info@kinico ... is also dropping in his Gmail or whatever it is. He showed it to me. I'm not an IT person, you understand? But I've realized that everything about data privacy, it's not just about IT. He showed it to me. So every organization I go to, even though we have an IT team, we also have a consultant. So once in a while, you can check, because you never know what might happen. And then those of you that have CCTV, it's also a data collection point. So if you're going to put a CCTV that we're seeing, make sure that it is the one that we are seeing that you're using. Don't go and put on HR mentorship. Sometimes because somebody said the GM caught somebody in the toilet on camera holding juju. It was a long discussion on the group up for me. I was like, okay, this camera in the toilet, who knows that it was there? Where was it installed? So if you're using your CCTV to capture the data of what happens, it's legal, but make sure that it is done within data protection laws. Data protection laws, it puts on you the responsibility to make sure that you are transparent. People know what you are using it for. Let us know. So be alert with your documents, laptops, and phones, even on your desk. Even on your desk. Some of us, when you're working on your desk, somebody comes behind you. You understand? If you don't have a screensaver that is smart, close the laptop. It's possible that somebody is standing next to you on the phone, you're distracted, they turn around and the message that drops on your phone is something they should have never seen. You can't take it back. And then I'll tell you two stories very quickly before I go. So your phone, let it be passworded while you're in the office, no matter how much you love them, because your best friend in the office has another best friend that you don't know where they are coming from. So be alert with your documents. I don't leave stuff on my table. And when you're going home, everything, one of our GMs had worked in one of the banks years ago, like, nothing, empty desk policy. And it has saved some people, because some people are careless. You leave what you shouldn't leave. I read of a story of a lady that on her last day, she left the payroll of everybody on the photocopier. She said, I know that she did it out of mischief. Supposing you leave that out of unintentional mistake. So just put everything in your desk. So very quickly, beware of drivers. Beware of drivers. Drivers are one of the most fastest means of dispatching information. I use the drivers. I've been using them for several times. And once I'm in the car, I don't talk. I rarely take calls. I know why, and it's because I want to be careful. Drivers into everything. And I tell when people come to my team and I'm about there, I say, please, once you're in HR, you need to be mindful of them. And I take a point of explaining that drivers are not bad, but because a lot of them, the level of information, their level of literacy is a bit lower. So they don't have so much interest in going online to do a course on Alison or Coursera. So what they do is they watch videos, they watch it, but after some time they get bored. In my office, we share the password for Wi-Fi to all the drivers. So for 3 hours, I watch film. After some time they get bored. The next thing is start talking. The only time I use them is if I want to do what old Soviet Union would do for disinformation. I'll just drop on information and I know that everybody has it. So you won't even need a memo. There was time when attendance among drivers was dropping. Coming late. Okay. So I now said to one of them that is my very good friend, I said, bros, do you know that there's a reason why people are coming late? Because we've said that we're not going to deduct, and I don't think we should deduct money. You know, I said, transport, traffic, no problem. I left. We'd had discussion with engage everybody, no problem. So the other time that I came to my office, I was talking to my babe. I said, I'm going to need you to be more focused on the report that you're giving. This was our intern. That's with attendance. Now, because management has said that even though we're implementing a non-accident bonus for drivers, attendance, punctuality is going to be one of the points that are going to reduce what they are going to get. We didn't do a memo again. There was no need. Because the person that had it shared it. That's the only time. But usually I don't talk in front of them. I'm very particular about that. And so lastly, loyalty in handling sensitive issues. The last case I want to share with you, we lost a driver, unfortunately, to hepatitis. Hepatitis, yeah. Unfortunately, we tried everything, management, everything, but we lost him. Sad story, but true story. And then after he died, another driver came to me and said he knows what killed the guy and that he has the same problem. I was very new in the organization. I said, how? He now said, the truth is that they did a test for everybody, but when the test results came back, the people that got the test results, like, doesn't know that everybody got to know that this guy had hepatitis and that, you know, how people were living. We all, HR people will remember the case where a lady was went for medical tests and she was found to have AIDS and they didn't treat it well. She ended up taking them to industrial court. So in this case, the driver said that the way they treated this guy, the departed guy, may so rest in peace, that it made him realize that he wasn't around when they did the test, but his friend was there who had passed away. So he said when he went back to the hospital to do his own test, he said he begged the nurse. He said, HR, I'm telling you this because I know I can't. He said, I begged her that please, my result must not go to the office. It must not. I was new. The person that was there had left before I came in. He said, so when he went back, they told him that I have hepatitis. He said, so as you and I said, how long? He told me. You know, he says he's afraid. Go. So the first thing I did, went back to the hospital together. I said, tell the lady that we're going to come and see her. He said she'll be afraid. Maybe she will not lose her job. This is about your life first. So he spoke to her. Then they now went to see the doctor. I said, doctor, what does he need? Eventually, we placed him on drugs. But at the company's cost, and it's not HMO, because we have a standby private hospital that we have for emergency, that if you cannot get to your HMO, that hospital is for anybody's emergency. Manager has been magnanimous to that. So we went back and said, sir, it's on the company cost. We put him on drugs. So I now had to go back to the MD and have that discussion that, sir, we have somebody who has this, but because of XYZ, but he's on treatment, and we did it. So you need to, the responsibility plus loyalty. I didn't use the same approach when I was dealing with the case of lady who, because of domestic abuse, had gotten a divorce and was called, because the MD doesn't need to know. That is not important to him. Her name was official, she had an affidavit, you understand? So balance it, know what you're sharing, know what doesn't need to be shared. And then as I round up, finally, I want to say, HR people on the call, do not be the weakest link. If there's anything I did not say, it's because there's so much to cover, but I hope that there'll be another opportunity. Don't be the weakest link. Nothing I've said today will make sense if HR people are careless. If you're careless in the way you talk, the way you hold your documents, the way you deal with stuff, nothing I've said will make sense. So please don't be the weakest link. And so this is the end of my slide. I hope that it's been insightful for everybody. I'm going to say thank you to everybody for your time, for staying engaged, for the attention. I don't take it for granted. Saturday night, you could have been doing anything else. I want to say thank you to Dr. Adeosun for this platform. You know, I'm one of the core team, and he's always encouraging us that please find time, and, you know, his leadership, his tenacity makes you realize that, okay, let me share knowledge. And the more you share, the more you learn. And then I want to say shout out to all the admin people on the call, those are not on the call that I'll watch later. You're doing a fantastic job. I enjoy being part of the group. So thank you, everybody. I did not leave a slide for questions because I'm assuming that there will be no question. But that was just a joke. Thank you, Mr. Adeosun. Doctor, over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is a master time. We'll just take a few comments and questions. So if you want to speak, please raise your hands immediately and we recognize you. We'll take Nene first. If you don't see any more hands, that'll be all. So in case you want to say something, all right, quickly raise your hands, take 2 or 3. Nene, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oluyemi. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, in fact, I enjoyed the session. I was seriously looking forward to this session because something had happened in an organization where I had worked before, and the case wasn't properly treated. But I want to hear from you how the case would have been treated. So the tax computation for the organization came in. The major documents addressed to the organization was put in the envelope, but the acknowledgement copy was given to the receptionist of that organization. And this was, that receptionist went through everybody's salary. So the person has the history of everybody's salary as at then. But the organization wasn't very particular. I raised the issue that this was a serious breach of data. But the organization wasn't really paying attention to such things. But now that we've had this conversation this evening, please, what do you think that we could have done to manage the situation better? The documents came from a regulatory agency from the state. I'm trying to be careful, you know, from the state where we are currently. So please, I want to hear from you how this would have been managed. Thank you.
Okay. I see Mr. Doyin Salabi raising his hands. Sir, I'll just assume, and if you want to say to that, I'll allow you, sir. Mr. Salabi is one of the people that worked very closely in our project on compliance on issues around data privacy.
Yes, please. You can go ahead. I've made him a co-host. He can speak.
Oh, sir, Mr. Salabi, please let me allow you to respond to that, and then if you need me to speak, I'll also speak.
No, thank you very much. Actually, I was going to make just a few comments on
Okay,
your
sir.
presentation, then I'll try and address the question. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to listen into what you have done. You are a professional speaker, and I want to confirm that. But I would
Thank
like
you,
to
sir.
say that the first thing I would like you people to do, because I like the practical examples she has given. So what we are saying is that even for an organization, having a DPO has become compulsory by law. You can employ somebody, but it can also be a contractor. It can come from outside. But the law requires you to have a data protection officer in your organization, either as an employee or as an external party, so that he will advise you on data privacy issues before they become infractions. Secondly, train your employees. We also have to train drivers in pidgin English. So because we understand that the managers will not put your organization in trouble, but the drivers and those assistants must be trained so they don't put your office in trouble. Thirdly, talking about visitors register, we are encouraging the use of QR code in your reception, that people will just snap and then they register by themselves. Also, you can also keep your receptionist with a phone that anybody doesn't have an Android phone can use to log into the form and fill and respond, so that you can keep visitors' information confidential. So on the issue of the receptionist, the first thing is we are trying to preach a data privacy culture. So the first thing is, have they been trained on data privacy consciousness? Because if you don't train people, as you HR people will say, you can't blame them. Because if you have trained them and there's a policy, and I'm sure as HR, you'll have put the consequence management there, that if this happens through your desk or from you, the following issues will apply to you as a member of staff. So the first thing I want to say is that we need to ensure we train all our staff. That is after that we can say there's a problem. Because if she knew there's a consequence, even if she read it, as we normally say, because in your position in the office, you will see information that make you say, but the should be back in your mind. They're not supposed to tell another person. So we cannot say the receptionist should not continue to see such documents. The important thing is, what do they do with the information? They should be trained, and then there should be as infraction, consequence management from HR should be in place. I'm very happy I'm sure you can see the entire data privacy actually, when we say it rests on the IT, you can imagine that actually a lot of it is resting on HR.
HR, yes, sir.
HR, not on IT. So please, I'm happy you have had it today. Please employ a DPO either as an employee or as a contractor. You need them now. We are agreeing that a data protection officer, it has become a job function. Don't ignore it. We already work with Lagos State to make it a cadre, that people can have careers, and they're taking to the national, to the federal, that it can become a cadre, even in federal civil service. So it's going to become a separate job of its own. So please, most important to me is training. If you don't train somebody, you can't blame them. I guess somebody else can add to what I've said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
sorry
very
to
much.
jump in again. I'm so sorry. Mr. Talabi, you have spoken so well. I wouldn't blame our receptionist because the information I was expecting that the people that brought the information would have asked for the authorized persons and handed over that document to them. They would have
Is
either
that-
asked for the head of HR or the head of finance, and they would have handed the document directly to
Delivery.
them instead
Okay.
of.
Courier service. It's a courier service, so
No, sir. No, it wasn't a courier service. The regulatory agency representatives came themselves. So it was intentional from their own side that this document was a sensitive one and it shouldn't be done via courier. So my expectation was that this should have been handed over, or the regulatory agency should have trained their own staff that these documents are highly sensitive and cannot be left at the desk of the receptionist. I think that's where this thing should have come from.
Okay, let
We
me now
didn't
quickly
take it
say
up
that.
because we were
no,
being
hold on, hold
careful.
on.
You know, we
No,
can't.
hold on. 1 minute. What you have mentioned is third party risks.
Yeah.
The third parties you work with, we expect you to have an
Okay,
agreement in
okay.
writing with them. We call it data privacy agreements. You must have agreements, what they should do and what they should not do. If you don't have, they are doing it by default. You are also complicit because you didn't tell them you want the way you want them to work with you. We always say that third party is like you do fence in your house, but your neighbor's fence is broken. You are not protected though, even if you have CCTV in your house. So going forward, we need you to review your workings with your partners and vendors. At least ask them, are you compliant? And if you work with them regularly, make sure there's an agreement. Make sure, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Adeosun, I'm not sure we have any more questions. So, Doctor, sir. Ijoma, can the third party be sued for professional? Well, if you really want to put your money and time into that, the court is open, but how long will it take you to get justice? What you'd rather do is focus on going forward. After today's session, have sessions with your employees. And let me say that if a regulatory authority doesn't bring a document that's sensitive to you, somebody else can bring it one day and the same receptionist can receive it. So trading for your own staff is the one that you can control. What external parties will do, a lot of times you really can't control it. Some people are careless and some organizations are under pressure. So they'll give like 10 things. So imagine when you give 10 letters to a dispatch and say, do it today. He's just in a hurry. He doesn't, the way he comes and says, your HR around, no. Is your account around, no. You just drop with anybody. You see, so train your own people because people will naturally be privy to certain types of information that needs to be kept. It's not only from outside, even from inside, please. And there should be consequences. Thank you very much. Doctor, I think we've come to the end of the questions. That's the last question.
You are the host now, ma. You are the host. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
here
Thank you very
again.
much, everybody, for today's session. It was a pleasure. I don't take your presence for granted, and I look forward to seeing you on subsequent sessions. At this point, I'll say good night to everybody. Thank you. Thank you for your kind comments. Adiola, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Nicola, thank you. I see your comments. I appreciate this. Don't take it for granted. Thank you. Long live HR mentorship. Elizabeth, blessing. Uncle K, thank you. Good night, sir. Omonua, thank you. Victoria Adu, thank you. Good night. Lawrence, when did I become doctor? Thank you, Rondo. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.